Welcome back to the Changemaker podcast. I'm your host, Deke Copenhaver. Today, my guest is Candidate Kate Denny. She's a candidate for Georgia's Senate District 10 in the 2026 general election. Her campaign centers on key issues reflecting her lived experiences with the ultimate goal of strengthening communities by providing after-school care assistance, livable wages, accessible health care, and affordable housing. Kate grew up in a military family as the oldest of 5 siblings. I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, moving 16 times, including 5 years in Bonn, Germany during the Gulf War. That nomadic upbringing instilled in her a deep sense of resilience and adaptability. She began her career as a shock trauma nurse in Salt Lake City and went on to serve in trauma ICUs at institutions like Wake Forest and Vanderbilt. With nearly 2 decades of frontline healthcare experience, Kate brings a grounded, compassionate perspective to public service. Kate met her husband, Jeb, a nephrologist, while living in Utah, and they married in 2010. Since then, they've lived in North Carolina, Tennessee, Colorado, and now Georgia, where they're raising their 3 children, Gus, Jane, and Hank. Now based in Avondale Estates, Kate remains closely connected to her parents and is deeply rooted in her community and balances motherhood, public service, and advocacy with authenticity and humility. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Kate Denny.
Welcome to the Changemaker podcast, hosted by Deke Copenhaver. Deke is the author of The Changemaker, a Forbes publishing book that has reached #1 on Amazon on multiple occasions and in multiple categories like management skills and total quality management. During this podcast, Deke interviews exceptional change-making leaders. Deke currently operates Copenhaver Consulting, where he helps local governments and other public organizations maximize their potential. He's also a sought-after public speaker. We hope that the Changemaker has an impact on you today and that you find takeaways that make you a better leader in your life. Now, here's Deke.
So, Kate, glad to have you on the show. I know it was short notice, and I do want to say, I don't generally wear a suit for the podcast, but I actually have a funeral for a good friend of mine, Ben Harbin, who's a former state legislator that passed recently. And yeah, a great guy. And we'll kind of get into it. You're running as a Democrat. Ben was a Republican. I've got friends on both sides of the aisle. I'm politically independent. But back when he was chair of the Appropriations Committee back during the 90s, I'm like, and even the 2000s, he was able to work in a bipartisan fashion. So what motivated you to run for office, and how do you view the political landscape these days, particularly in the state of Georgia?
I think in Georgia, well, thank you for having me on the show, and I'm sorry to hear about your friend today. One of the things that it's so different from when, just as you were saying, from when your friend was in the legislature. People are really divided. Yeah. Even in our local capital. And it's really too bad. I mean, I think that it's this division at this high level is really, honestly, an abuse of power, because they're gatekeeping our voices, which we are more moderate. I think most people, it's something like 74-75% of us are somewhere in the middle, and we can see both sides, or at least understand the other side's take on things. And when we have this strong division by these leaders that doesn't actually represent us. So I think that's gatekeeping our voices, and it's an abuse. And I hope to be a voice that changes that and represents my constituents.
Well, I'm a pragmatist. I'm also a dreamer, but I come from a background in business. And when I was in real estate, I was in real estate development. I'm like, in real estate or in any business, you sit together at a negotiating table and it's back and forth, and you come to a meeting of the minds. Nobody gets everything they want, but I always focused on trying, and even in office, trying to get the win-win situation. But if people are not willing to sit at the negotiating table, it's hard to do the business of the people, in my opinion.
Yes, I think you're right. I think a lot of times they don't even walk into the room, right, yeah, to hear the other side. And that's the problem. And the issue is that their refusal to walk in the room is actually not representing us, right? No. We want them in there. So we need to do a better job of choosing candidates that will represent us.
Well, and that's what I was saying before coming on air, that I sort of view my podcast as counter programming to the mainstream media, where people from all walks of life, different points of view, can come on and we can have a really good conversation about what are the solutions to our problems, not what are the problems. It's just like, and I see a lot of people that run for office and that say that either they run and I'm going to go fix Atlanta or I'm going to go fix Washington. And it's like, how's that working out for you? Or people say, well, I fought against this. I fought against that. I stopped this from happening. But I'm like, but what did you get accomplished? And it is, I'd love to get your take on this, that I think particularly more so in Congress maybe than at the state level, but basically we're rewarding bad behavior on both sides of the aisle. People misbehave. You're a mother of 3 kids and basically act in an aberrant fashion and then send out fundraising emails. So I'm like, that's basically like telling your kids when they throw a tantrum, okay, well, that's okay. And you're going to get your way. Plus, here's some Coke and some candy to go along with that. It's like, how do we continue to reward bad behavior?
Right. I don't think we need to.
No.
I don't think we need to be raising funds for these people. I think that the power still lies with us. And it comes down to, am I going to hold my kids to a standard and then say, yes, we'll let somebody lead us who falls below that standard? No, we should be living the bare minimum. Our standard is already, whether we're Christian or we have a religion or we just have morals. I don't want somebody leading me who's not even doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
If they're supposed to be my leader, they need to be at a very high standard.
Well, and that's, it's interesting because as we discussed coming on, when I was growing up, there were statesmen on both sides of the aisle that I really looked up to. And I'm like, that's who I tried to emulate during my time in office. And I just had a discussion with somebody the other day that people would ask me, why do you not, in office for 9 years, why do you not go off on your coworkers and all this stuff? And I'm like, because my dad raised me to be a professional. My dad flew B-17 bombers in World War II. I know your father was a veteran as well. But yeah. I hold myself to that standard to treat people with dignity and respect and maintain my character and integrity, because at the end of the day, that's all you've got.
Right. Yes. Those things in our personal life should definitely transfer into our professional life.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have this delineation of, well, they're a good person at home, and when they go to work, they're going to be doing whatever best suits them. We need to raise our standard, raise the bar on this, just as we do for ourselves.
Exactly. And that's, when I ran, I committed to, I'm like, I'm never going to call anybody any names. I'm never going to throw my coworkers under the bus. I'm just not going to do that because, and so often, when I first ran, I told my first campaign manager, I'm like, and it was, so I announced my first run in June of 2005, and my mother-in-law died 8 days later. Oh. So I told my first campaign guy that July, I said, look, first off, I'm never going to go negative. That is not who I am. I don't care if you say I've got to delineate opinions. I'm like, slinging mud is slinging mud. I won't do that. And I said, the second thing is, if my family needs me, during this time of grieving our mother-in-law, they come first. It's the campaign's got to take a back row to that. But doing it that way and never slinging mud, running positive campaigns 3 times, I won an average of 64% of the vote. So I still think if you present voters with an alternative, they'll go to it. But I remember seeing a Republican and a Democrat running for Congress at a campaign forum, my second year running for office, 2 gentlemen who I like and who I respect, but they got in an argument over who was the first one to sling mud. And it's like going back and forth. No, you were first. No, you were first. And I'm like, you're representing us in Washington. What is this? This is like 2 first graders.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, as you were speaking and talking about, the way that you ran your campaign, I would have been a person that would have crossed party lines to vote for you, because that is exactly where the bar should be.
Well, the beautiful thing about, Georgia is municipal elections are nonpartisan. So
Right.
you wouldn't have had to have crossed party lines to vote for me.
You're right. You're right.
but it is, I just, to me, I don't think you can lead to the extremes. And it's with municipal government, I'm like, and I get that a lot of people are trying to use it as a springboard to go to higher office. But I thought in a city of 200,000 people, why would I go towards one party or the other and alienate a huge portion of the people I serve? And I tell people that at least at the local level, and I think if things are going to start to change, it's best done at the local level, but the state level too. I think, Washington is so, I don't know what we're going to do about Washington. I'm not going to do anything because that is way above my pay grade. And I tell people, look, whoever's in the White House, God is on his throne, and I'm going to put my trust in God over any elected official. But I think it can change at the local level. I saw it change, but I do believe it can change at the state level too. But it's, as you said, I spoke for the Young Presidents Organization in South Carolina recently on how do you raise change-making kids. And I don't have kids myself. I'm the youngest of 5. I've got 12 great nieces and nephews, and I've focused on that from the get-go. But I told them, I said, look, if they can't see it, they can't be it. If we want, public servant-minded servant leaders who are kind, compassionate, caring, are loving towards their neighbors across all lines of difference, they can't be it if they can't see it. And I don't, even if I'm not a parent, I'm an adult. And so I have to exhibit that behavior because, as you said, it's duplicitous to say, okay, kids, let's act this way. And then I'm going to go off and act a fool in front of the cameras to raise money. It's just, that's a duplicitous message.
Yes. Yeah. I think that they forget that they're public servants.
Yeah.
And that their whole focus it's not self-serving at all. It's whatever's in the best interest of us. And as you do that, that naturally unifies your community because people on both sides are having the same struggles with unaffordable childcare and they're having the same struggles with housing. And so if you stick to that message and you, like you said, you're not slinging mud at other people, then people do recognize that you have their best interest.
Well, how did you decide to offer yourself for public service? You've got an interesting background being in a military family growing up, which I think is great because I think all that exposure teaches you how to get along with all different types of people.
Yes, it does. And I think that my parents did a great job of keeping us aware of injustices around us while also helping us recognize that we had a lot of blessings and that it would be our job to use those to help others, right? And that's carried over into adulthood. And as I've become more and more aware, just through life experiences, which it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to experience something to know that it's unfair, but even like something as simple as childcare, recognizing how expensive it is, and then seeing my neighbors who may even have less blessings, how expensive it is for them. So that's really motivated me that I can make a difference. I can be the person that takes public service seriously, that I'm not getting anything out of this myself, that I can help people and that I don't have to be on the extremes of either side to get that done. Most of us are in the middle, and it doesn't matter what side you're on, you have these same problems.
Oh yeah. And it's interesting. So I had Bob Crawford, the bass player for the Avett Brothers, on the show one time. Bob is like a college professor. He's absolutely brilliant. He has a podcast called The Road to Now, which explains how America got to this point in our history, which is very interesting. But I made that point. I always make that point that I believe America and society as a whole is a bell curve. And that most of us, I know me, you, most people I know are somewhere in the middle of the bell curve. Mm-hmm. But generally what we see in politics are the extremes on either side and in the media. But he said, I completely agree with you, but he made a very interesting point. He said, but when the extremes are controlling the levers of power, that's when we get the situation that he feels like we have right now. But I think if you're a candidate and they say, you've got to get out your base. I'm like, I never focused on that. I never went to the extremes. I'm like, so I went through a church. This is a good lesson for you. I went through a church leadership retreat when I first ran for office. And the moderator said, okay, in church politics, you've got 3% of the people that are for everything, and they're very vocal, 3% that are against everything, and they're very vocal, 12% that are for, but 12% that are against, but not as vocal. So, but that's 30%. And then you've got the 70% in the middle that just want to see things move forward.
Yes.
So I always, and it was as in a mayor in a city of 200,000 people is easier than being a state senator, but I governed to the majority, and it got the extremes on either end so mad at me. But I'm like, well, if I'm pissing off the extremes on either side, I'm probably doing what's right. But it's funny. My mom was a liberal Democrat, my dad a conservative Republican who never voted the same way in a presidential election in over 40 years of marriage. So it can work, but we've got to be able to have safe spaces to have these dialogues with people of differing opinions. It's okay, and we should not demonize somebody just because we don't agree with them politically.
I agree. I'm actually married to a Republican. And we oftentimes we vote alike because we're both pretty center. And so we have, we can see the sides. I like to describe us as people that say and a lot, like we believe in this and this. It doesn't have to be you believe in this or this. It can be two things at once. And I think that's where we find a lot of common ground.
Well, you'll love this. So we had a group of like 14 churches that started meeting together prior to, we took a direct hit from Hurricane Helene, but prior to the hurricane hitting, to talk about how can we get the faith-based community working together better. And so in the last meeting I attended, I said, look, so coming out of the storm, Augusta, I'm on the Development Authority Board. We're getting billions of dollars of economic development investment. We've got, tons of churches, tons of nonprofits. We've got a great economy, but yet we've had a 20+% poverty rate for over 2 decades. Wow. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the United Way's categorization of ALICE, which is asset limited, income constrained, but employed. So it's effectively the working poor.
Yes.
So 59% of people in Augusta are in that category. That was prior to the storm. So I was saying, we've got the resources to address those issues if we sequence them together in the right way. Right. And the young man who's the chairman of the Democratic Party leaned over to me and he goes, I never knew you were so liberal. And I'm like, so caring for the least of these is liberal? I'm like, it's humanitarian. It's having a heart for people.
Yes, absolutely. But the extreme, he's thinking that maybe you're an extremist and you don't think that way. And that's a misjudgment on for him. That's too bad for him that he doesn't see that we can be many things at once.
No, and I love that you're married to a Republican. And I'm like, we need to see more of that because it does concern me when you see families and churches and communities and neighborhoods torn apart by this toxic political polarization, which polarization was the word of the year last year, so I think they're trying to rebrand polarization as something else. But it is concerning, and I came through cancer a couple of years ago, but I said toxic polarization is like a cancer on our nation.
Yes,
and we need to heal more so than anything. And even cancer I use as a common ground issue. I'm like, it does not discriminate, and everybody I know, whether it's been themselves, a loved one, a family member, everybody has dealt with cancer in some ways. As you say, just taking care of children or mental health issues or all of these things impact all of us. And it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's absolutely true. These are unifying issues. And just like you said, if we're not slinging mud at each other and we focus on these issues, then we can come together better. And we can leave room for different ideas. Yeah. Because we're not coming in angry and already enemies. We're coming in with, this is a problem. Who has ideas to solve it?
Well, so I want to get your take on this, and I want to get your input. So yesterday, we're doing a charter review in Augusta. And so yesterday, I met with the chairman of the Charter Review Committee. but she said, everybody wants more governmental transparency. And so I love this stuff. I love that government can provide services and serve the people. That I love. Politics, I was never a politician because I just wasn't. But I said, I'll tell you what would be very innovative. And I think we have the chance to establish an innovative new form of government here. What about if we require that our local government does quarterly shareholder reports or meetings for the citizens? Because effectively, the citizens are the shareholders. Yes. And we should be. But rather than, these small, angry minority groups that are so vocal that often drive the debate, you could promote this and you could get big attendance to where you could have that conversation and the government could say, this is what we did quarter over quarter. So what are
I think that's a great idea. I think it's amazing. I have been thinking about, if I run for the state senate, then I would like on my website, my money in and my money out. Yeah. So I know you can look it up through the Secretary of State, but if I'm going to be these people's employee, why would I make them go dig for this information? I want to have it where they can easily see, okay, she's taken in this much and she spent it on signs or whatever. I think that goes a long way. If you remember that you serve these people and that they employ you, then what do you have to hide if you're doing the right thing?
So I interviewed, I'm actually an advisory board member for the Forward Party, the party that Andrew Yang and all started. And so back in the fall, I interviewed a guy named Jermaine Johnson. He is a state representative around Columbia. Great guy. He played basketball at College of Charleston, but he's a Democrat. But he's like, I reach out to Republicans all the time. He's like, I invite, and even the extreme groups, I invite them to come so I can try to at least understand. He is I'm like, man, and I've put that the podcast out there, and even my Republican friends are like, we need more Jermaine Johnsons. But it is, I think it's more possible at the state level now than it is at the federal level, although I'm not sure if you're aware, because this group is active in Georgia now. The Future Caucus has been around for a decade. They recruit young millennial and Gen Z lawmakers they started off in Congress, but they're in state houses now, and they're in Georgia. So they have co-chairs, a Democrat and Republican, but that age range, and how old are you? I'm not supposed to ask 43. A lady your age.
I can tell you I'm 43.
Okay. But generally that age range are getting more bipartisan pieces of legislation passed in state houses and in Washington, no press coverage whatsoever.
Okay.
It's like, okay, there's actually some good stuff going on, and it's the younger folks that are doing it. So why don't we? And so I've had lots of people from the Future Caucus, the Forward Party, and all, because here again, there are good things. There are shoots of green out there, but we need to shine a light on them. And I mean, there are good people like you that are offering yourself for public service for the right reasons.
Yes, I am so happy to hear about that, man, because I totally agree with him about going to the other party. I think that and meeting with people who you already know might think exactly opposite of you, because there is common ground to be found. And also, I think that does raise the bar as far as what the public would expect out of a candidate. Like, you know what, they're a different party than me, but they're willing to come before me, and they're even going to let me scold them, because they work for me. And I think that would really be beneficial, I think, right now at a federal level too, if we had more people standing in. And because we've got some groups who aren't going to town halls, the other side could kind of swoop in and say, you know what, I know you're angry, use me as your sounding board. I represent you too. And that raises the standard of who those people will vote for again, whichever side you're on. The caliber of the candidate raises. Well, I'm not going to vote for them. They never come over here. They won't even talk to me because they think that I hate them.
Yeah, and that's and that's. I mean, you're not serving the people if you're not listening to both sides, and that is so key, is listening. But with the Forward Party, we endorsed both Democrats and Republicans last year in the midterms. So, and there were some forward candidates, but basically what we did was we had a requirement that you had to sign an agreement that you would maintain your character and integrity, treat everybody in the process with dignity and respect, and just, and try to be a role model. So people are like, you had to get people to sign on to do that. I'm like, yeah, that's how bad it's gotten. But a lot of, and it's funny, a lot of the candidates that took the forward endorsement caught hell from either political party, from the extremes. But I'm like, at least that's a first step in accountability. Because I just think, so the young forwardists are the on-campus proxy for the forward party. And I've had their chairman on several times. His name is Gabe McGuire. He's a freshman at the University of Pennsylvania. He and 5 other high school kids, teenagers, started the Young Forwardists. I mean, they're trying to change American politics. But he had one of the best statements. He said, look, I'm 18 years old. All my generation has ever known is the food fight that is politics right now. And I think we deserve better. And I'm like, I agree. But I told him, I'm like, Gabe, when I was 18, I was at the University of Georgia, and I was not concerned with changing American politics. I was concerned with my next state and where I was going to get my next underage beer. But here again, there is hope, and I would love to connect you with some of these people so you can see that it's good that there's safety in numbers, but it does work, and there are people out there doing it in what I consider to be the right and the ethical way, and they're succeeding doing it that way. And I think if you present yourself as that kind of a candidate and you don't just walk the walk, talk the talk, you walk the walk, I think that is what Americans are hungry for.
Yes.
So I've got a friend who's a leadership guru out of Vancouver, and he said, most of my friends in America, they're not extremists. They feel like they're politically homeless now.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. It's hard. We in the middle, whatever side we're on, we need to be louder.
Yeah.
And we need to do the right thing no matter what. Come what may, we will do the right thing. If we sign something from the forward party and it upsets the extremes, who cares?
Yeah.
We're doing the right thing. And people, they're looking for beacons of integrity and true public servants and people who aren't going to abuse the system for their own benefit. So I think that I'm not surprised that those people are honestly being blessed in their endeavors.
Well, it's so funny. I went on a media diet about 4 months ago. I got off of all social media, and I've just voraciously read, listened to podcasts, studied and everything. But there's a great minister named Jamie Winship that talks about the scarcity mindset, which most people have. There's not enough to go around. If somebody gets something, it's taking something away from me. When we serve a God of abundance. We are a nation of abundant resources. There is enough food in the world to feed everybody. Yes. But it's just almost like, playing on the fear of scarcity, separation. Right. That's kind of been baked into politics. And I'm like, I'm not going to play that game anymore. And I just recently, I'm like, okay, Lord, I am going to focus on seeking your kingdom every day and on building your kingdom, on bringing people together on common ground, because that's what you've called me to do. And I'm like, I've had a mindset of fear at times, not when I had cancer, but I'm like, it just really hit me over the weekend. I'm like, God's like, okay, I got you through 9 years in office without any scandal. I brought you through cancer. What do you have to worry about? Just go do the work that I called you to. Yeah. And I told George, I'm like, even today, this interview, I've been over backwards to help make it happen because I want to give a chance to you to have a forum to speak to those issues and to speak to the people that I've got a really broad range audience, but I know people enjoy common sense and they enjoy hearing a good conversation that's nourishing. We need nourishment. We live in a society we've got an epidemic of loneliness. We've got an epidemic of depression, addiction. We need to love on each other a lot more than we need to hate on each other. So I'm like, I'm just going to love on everybody. How about that?
Yeah, I think
So
that
sue me.
you cannot go wrong with that. I mean, as a religious person, I'm a Christian, and I only see that from Christ, right? He only loves everyone. So I think that it's really admirable that this is how you use your platform. You use your voice for good.
Well, and that's, to me, I'm like, okay, Jesus was the greatest servant leader ever to walk the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I live for grassroots engagement. I loved going through chemotherapy, if you can believe that, because I met so many cool people.
Wow.
But I'm like, he didn't lead from the C-suite or from a gated community.
Right.
He was on the street with the people who happen to be, money changers, tax collectors, prostitutes.
Mm-hmm.
He loved everybody, and he didn't say, no, they're on the wrong team.
Right.
And just listening and reading, it's like the disciples were like, the Samaritan woman, don't mess with her, just don't. So they were trying to say, and he's like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to love everybody. And I'm going to use people who you might not expect can do wonderful things and build the kingdom. Watch this,
Yes. Yeah, I think it's so true. And he's a perfect example of you do the right thing no matter what.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's important. As you were talking about the loaves, you were talking about, there wouldn't be enough to feed everybody, and people kind of get stuck in this mentality, the scarcity mentality. And I was talking earlier today about the loaves and the fishes, where why would we think that even if we ran out, somehow a miracle wouldn't provide manna or something, we need to be courageous and we need to be brave. And whether that comes from a religious upbringing or not, I think we can still find that. We just have to speak up.
I will tell you a good commentary that I heard this week from this guy, Jamie Winship, who I'm binge listening to. But he had a conference where he had a bunch of executives there, but he also had a bunch of homeless people. And so he said, what unites us? And somebody said, love. He's like, most people in this room probably don't understand love. He said, but I'll tell you what unites us. It's fear. And he said, so I'm going to tell you my fear first. My fear is that I'm a disappointment, because my mother said I was a disappointment my whole life. If I didn't go to Bible study, I was disappointing God. So then the first CEO is like, I'm afraid of failure, because I've got this big job and everything. And then a female exec goes, I'm afraid of failure too. Homeless guy goes, I'm afraid of losing my community, because every night I go to bed and somebody could steal everything I've got or stick a needle in my neck. But these guys, we take turns going to sleep at night, so we watch each other's backs. The next guy said, I feel the same way, but I also fear loneliness. And the girl goes, I fear loneliness too, started crying, ran out of the room. Homeless guy goes and brings her back. So you've got these successful people that have siloed themselves, trying to get ahead in life. And then these homeless people who are building community. And Jamie was like, who's teaching who? Know? So we can learn from everybody. But so I just want to tell you, thank you for once again offering yourself for public service. Thank you for being my guest today. And just, are there any closing comments you'd like to make? And then I've got a couple questions for you.
I just think that I want to be the leader that I wish I had, that I could, really say, I don't ever want to say, I hate that I have to say about some of my leaders, they're good enough or they're not that bad. I want somebody to say about me, she's really representing me. Yep. She's working hard. She's being honest. I can trust her. I might not agree with her all the time, but she'll hold herself accountable. She'll own her mistakes and she'll keep trying, and that she's not getting anything out of this other than serving.
I love that answer. So where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm Kate Denny _GA. I'm also on Threads, and I have a Facebook. But in a few weeks or whatever, when I make my official announcement, I'll have more things. So we'll reach back out to you when that happens.
All righty. Well, so on a daily basis, what puts a smile on your face and brings joy to your heart?
Probably the funny and terrible things my kids do sometimes. Where sometimes you just have to laugh instead of crying, and then sometimes you're just laughing because it's fun.
Well, that's a good answer. I asked one young lady, and she goes, coffee? She's like, it's all I can think of. It's all I can think of. Okay, thanks for being my guest today, and just continue to work on serving the public. And people from across all lines of difference, all walks of life. That is what I think the good Lord wants us to do.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
That's all the time we got. Dropping the mic, and we are out. Hey, guys, thanks for listening to or watching the Changemaker podcast today. Greatly appreciate it. If you're listening and you want to see the video, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Deke Copenhaver. That's a pretty easy to remember, I would think. But really, we also want to remind you to like, subscribe, rate across all platforms, download. And if you're looking for a coach, a speaker, or anything, you know where to find me. Just email me at me@dekecopenhaver.com. And thanks so much for listening.